The underground garage was always cloaked in a silence that pressed against the walls like a heavy fog. Dim lights flickered overhead, casting uneasy shadows that danced across the cold concrete. It was a place most people passed through without much thought. But on this particular night, something shifted. In the farthest corner, beneath an old ventilation pipe that hummed faintly with age, a pair of amber eyes glinted in the darkness. The shape was small, but its presence was undeniable. Watchful, cautious, primal, the Bobcat had been there for days now, winding between pillars like a ghost, searching, sniffing, hiding. Her fur was patchy and dulled, and her gait uneven. Yet what was most alarming was the ballooned belly dragging beneath her slender frame. Some might mistake her for being full, stuffed from some secret bounty, but those who looked closely knew something was terribly off. The elevator whirred to life. Tires screeched faintly above. Then headlights sliced through the dimness as a black sedan curved into the lot. She knew this car. The scent of warm chicken and rice, the soft tone of a human voice, the way the driver always slowed just a bit at the entrance like she was scanning the shadows. The woman. She parked as usual, her door swinging open with a familiar groan. But today, she carried no bag, no food. The Bobcat took 2 trembling steps forward, her head low. Her tail barely lifted as she emerged just enough into the light for the woman to see her. The woman froze, her eyes widening. "Oh, sweetie," she whispered, bending slightly, instinctively reaching for a pocket that held nothing today. Their eyes met. Feral weariness met gentle regret. The woman took a slow breath, guilt etching itself across her face. "I didn't bring anything tonight." As the Bobcat paused, her ears twitching, another sound echoed behind them. Footsteps, confident, purposeful. The woman's husband appeared from around the corner, holding a plastic bag that crinkled softly with each step. Inside, blessed salvation. A sealed tub of shredded chicken, a bottle of clean water, a plastic bowl. He knelt without hesitation, setting the items down near the nest of shadows where the cat lingered. The Bobcat's nostrils flared, her muscles trembling. Still, she stepped forward, drawn by the aroma, desperation overriding fear. Moved by compassion, the woman scurried to the trunk of the car and pulled out an old cardboard box. She knelt beside it, gently tucking in a towel she'd used for yoga just that morning. It was warm and still faintly scented with her perfume. She slid it close to the wall, next to the pipe. "This is for you," she murmured, her voice barely more than a breath. The cat, for the first time in days, lay down. By morning, the parking garage felt different. The buzz of fluorescent lights still stuttered overhead, and distant traffic rumbled like a storm on the horizon. But a strange stillness lingered in the air, as if the world was holding its breath. The woman returned, this time not alone. Her husband carried a thermos of warm broth, and she held a tray with small containers, tuna flakes, soft rice, a bit of milk. Their steps echoed as they made their way to the far end of the garage, eyes scanning the concrete maze. And there she was. The Bobcat lay curled near the pipe, but something had changed. Her belly was rounder, impossibly taut. Her breaths came quicker, and when she tried to stand, her back legs buckled slightly. Still, she caught the scent of food and pushed herself upright, determined. "She's worse," the woman said softly, her hand pressing to her chest. "She's hungry," her husband replied, "but she's strong. Look, she came for food." The cat did more than come. She broke into a weak sprint, paws barely grazing the ground as she dashed toward the bowls. Her ribs showed more clearly now, the tension between her need and her body's limits playing out in every motion. "She's going to give birth," the woman whispered. "It could be any day now, They exchanged glances, quick, knowing. The cardboard box was no longer enough. It had somehow disappeared overnight, likely pushed away or torn apart. They needed to act. They returned moments later with a pet carrier, its door wide open, lined with soft fabric and a toy mouse resting inside. The woman knelt near it, gently tapping the carrier's edge with a nail. "Come here, girl. This is safe, warm, just for you." But the bobcat wasn't fooled. She sniffed once, twice, then backed away. Her eyes flashed with uncertainty, her instincts screaming against the trap. The couple tried a larger cardboard box next, one with higher walls and an open top. They placed the food inside, watching hopefully. Still, the bobcat avoided it, pacing along the outer edge, tail low. They sighed, defeated for the moment, until the husband emerged with a final option. A metal cage from the vet, one used for small rescues. Reluctantly, the woman set the food inside. The bobcat hesitated longer this time. Her hunger warred with her fear. But finally, drawn by the scent of chicken and water, she stepped in. The door clicked shut gently. Inside, the bobcat froze. Her limbs pulled close, eyes wide, unmoving, as if stillness could protect her from whatever came next. The woman crouched beside her, whispering soft words. "You're okay now. I know you're scared, but I promise, you're not alone." She reached 2 fingers toward the cage's bars and held them still. The bobcat didn't move, but for the first time she didn't flinch either. That night, they brought her home. Their apartment was modest. Warm-toned walls, soft lighting, potted plants in the corners. The woman had already prepared a small, quiet room with the air conditioning set low and curtains drawn to dim the light. A plush blanket covered the floor, and a cardboard box lined with fresh towels sat waiting in the center like a cradle of hope. They carried the cage in gently, avoiding sudden noise, and placed it near the box. The woman opened the door slowly and stepped back. The bobcat didn't move. Not at first, but something had changed. Maybe it was the quiet, the scent of lavender on the towels, or the absence of cold wind and humming concrete. The bobcat inched forward, paw by paw, until she crossed the threshold of the cage. She paused at the edge of the box. Then carefully, she climbed in. The woman watched, her breath catching. The bobcat circled once inside, curled her body tightly and rested her head down. Not in fear, but in surrender, in trust. "I think she knows she's safe now," the woman whispered. Over the next few days, a silent rhythm settled into the room. The bobcat, still skittish, watched them through narrowed eyes but no longer bolted at their footsteps. She ate, small, delicate bites at first, then with growing confidence. The woman prepared meals with unwavering dedication: minced chicken, boiled fish, and warm milk poured with care. One evening she brought in a surprise. A small aquarium now glowed in the corner of the room, filled with darting guppies and colorful rocks. It was meant to entertain, to distract from the bobcat's rising tension. And it worked. The cat stared at the shimmering fish for hours, eyes blinking slowly, tail flicking with silent curiosity. The vet visit came next. They bundled her gently into the cage again, though this time she didn't resist as strongly. The car ride was quiet. The bobcat huddled low, but her eyes remained alert. At the clinic, the fluorescent lights were harsh, the walls too clean. But the vet, an older woman with wise hands and a calm voice, took her time. She examined the bobcat with gentle fingers murmuring reassurances. "No broken bones," she said. "Heart and lungs sound steady. But look at this belly. It's not ready just yet." She gently pressed along the sides. "No signs of labor, no fluid. We've got maybe a week, give or take, and She paused, turning toward the screen where the X-ray glowed softly. "I count 5. 5 little ones in there." The woman exhaled, smiling through tears. 5 lives. 5 futures waiting to begin. They returned home with a renewed urgency. The woman cleaned the room twice that day. She bought new towels, toys, and even a soft classical music playlist that she let run during the night. She researched every hour: how to help a stray through labor, how to recognize signs of distress, how to bottle feed in emergencies. The bobcat remained quiet, but her eyes changed. She no longer looked away when the woman entered the room. She watched and waited. The days leading up to the birth unfolded like the ticking of a fragile clock. Each morning, the woman brought in new food: warm, nutrient-rich meals blended carefully with fish stock, chicken liver, and ground pumpkin for digestion. She always knocked gently before entering, announcing her presence with a soft, "Hey, sweet girl, it's just me." And the bobcat, once feral and stiff with distrust, began to lift her head in recognition. Sometimes, late at night, the woman would peek through the door just to make sure she was still breathing. The rise and fall of the cat's belly brought her comfort and a tinge of nervous anticipation. The bobcat had taken to resting in the box for long hours, her eyes sometimes closed, sometimes alert as if she were listening to a frequency only she could hear. Her belly twitched now and then, a gentle kick, a ripple beneath the skin. One morning, the woman found her pacing, nervous, uncertain. The bobcat circled the room 3 times before returning to the box, only to get out again moments later. Her breathing was heavier, her movements more erratic. The woman crouched nearby, whispering encouragement, not daring to get too close. Then it happened. A sudden jolt rippled through the cat's body. She froze mid-step, her eyes wide, and then a low moan escaped her throat. The woman's heart dropped. "It's starting," she whispered, signaling to her husband. They dimmed the lights further. No sudden sounds. They watched from the corner with bated breath. The bobcat returned to the box on her own. Her sides heaved. Every muscle trembled. She let out a cry, guttural and raw, and then the first kitten slipped into the world. Tiny, damp, fragile. The woman wanted to run forward but held herself back. The bobcat looked down at the kitten, then began to lick its tiny form, cleaning it with desperate intensity. The woman turned away briefly to wipe her eyes. Another contraction came. Another cry. Then a second kitten. This one seemed weaker, but it moved. Its small legs twitched. The woman whispered, "You're okay. You're doing so good." The delivery went on. 2 hours passed. 5 kittens in total, each one tinier than the last, each one alive. The bobcat lay breathless, her chest rising and falling in uneven gasps. Her eyes drooped, exhaustion hitting like a wave. The woman moved forward, slowly now, placing a bowl of glucose water just beside the box. The cat sniffed once, twice, then lapped at it with slow, deliberate strokes. Then the woman did something she'd never done before. She reached into the box, not to take anything away, but to gently lift one of the newborns who had slipped slightly to the side. She placed it back against its mother's warm belly. The bobcat didn't react with fear. She blinked once, slowly, and then lowered her head to nuzzle her young. The room felt like a chapel. Soft music played from the speaker near the window, barely audible beneath the sounds of life. 5 kittens lay nestled against their mother's belly, each one twitching slightly, their noses blindly seeking warmth and milk. The bobcat licked them in turns, her movements rhythmic, instinctual, sacred. The woman sat quietly in the corner, legs pulled to her chest, watching. She didn't dare interrupt the moment. It was too fragile, too holy. But she could not help her tears. The exhaustion, the tension of the past week, it all unraveled at once. Relief bloomed in her chest like a warm flame. They'd made it, all of them. Against all odds, through uncertainty and fear, this little family had been brought into the world safely. That evening, while the bobcat slept deeply, curled protectively around her new brood, the woman tiptoed into the kitchen. She boiled fish bones and slow-cooked the meat until it fell apart into tender shreds. She blended it with rice and goat's milk, adding finely mashed carrots for nutrients. She poured a portion into a shallow dish and carried it back with both hands, warm and steaming. The bobcat stirred at the scent, her nose twitching. She blinked wearily, lifted her head, and saw the woman approaching slowly, crouching low to not startle her. "It's okay," the woman said gently. "You need to eat. You gave everything." The bobcat did not hiss, did not back away. She stepped forward, ever so slightly, and began to eat. That night, the woman sat outside the room for hours, her back against the wall, listening to the tiny mewls of the kittens. Occasionally, the mother let out a soft grunt, as if reassuring them all, as if saying, "We're okay now. It's over." In the days that followed, the apartment became a sanctuary. The woman continued her routine with quiet devotion. Every morning, she cleaned the towels and brought fresh ones. She bought bottles of goat milk and special mother cat supplements. She rearranged the room so the sun could gently pour in through a narrow slit in the curtain, just enough to warm the cardboard box during midday naps. The kittens grew fast. Their eyes began to open one by one, blinking uncertainly into the world. They wobbled, crawled over each other, mewing clumsily as they explored inches beyond their nest. One morning, the woman entered and gasped softly. The box was empty. She looked around and found all 5 kittens snuggled into a corner of the room, a soft pile of fur and warmth. The bobcat sat nearby, her gaze steady, almost amused, as if to say, "They're explorers now, just like I once was." The woman knelt beside them. "Hey, do you see your mom?" she whispered to the kittens, smiling. "She's right here." One of them turned its tiny head and let out a small, raspy mewl. Her heart melted all over again. The bond between them deepened without words. Each day brought subtle changes. The kittens grew steadier on their paws, their squeaks louder, their playfulness more visible. They batted at each other with soft paws, pounced clumsily on invisible prey, and tumbled into naps in the crook of their mother's belly. But it was the bobcat who surprised the woman most. Once a creature of wild shadows and instinctive fear, she now began to change in small, beautiful ways. When the woman entered the room, the bobcat no longer darted into corners or pressed herself against walls. She watched, guarded still, but calm. Sometimes when the woman placed the food near her, the bobcat didn't wait for her to leave. She ate with slow dignity, pausing only to check on her kittens before returning to her meal. And one time, just once, she let the woman touch her. A brief, feather-light graze of fingertips across her head. It felt like a gift. The woman kept up her careful care. She mixed nutritious broths, hand-pureed fish, and even began buying fresh goat milk weekly. She blended it with rice porridge to create a creamy paste that the bobcat could easily consume. The fish soup, though, became the favorite. Every time the scent filled the room, the bobcat's ears perked. Her eyes gleamed. She would rise with a slow stretch, step across the room with a grace that was returning to her, and lap up the meal as if it were sacred. The woman fed her by hand sometimes, spoon by spoon, just to see the trust in those golden eyes. "You're doing such a good job," she whispered once as she offered another spoonful. "You're an incredible mom." The bobcat's ears flicked, and for a moment their eyes met. Not wild, not feral. Equal. Connected. It was early one morning when something shifted again. The woman walked in with fresh towels and a basket of toys only to find the box empty once more, but this time even the corner was vacant. Panic twisted in her stomach. She searched the room, whispering softly, trying not to frighten them. Her eyes swept past the curtain, the toy shelf, the bundled blanket in the corner. And then she saw it. All 5 kittens, tucked beneath the edge of the blanket, eyes wide open now, staring curiously at her. One had climbed halfway up the folded cloth, its tiny claws gripping the fabric like a miniature mountain climber. The bobcat sat nearby, watching her kittens with a bemused patience. She looked up at the woman and blinked slowly. "You moved them," the woman whispered, relief washing over her. "You picked a new spot for them?" She knelt beside the blanket and smiled. The kittens squirmed toward her, fearless. They knew her now. Not as a stranger, not even just as the food giver, but as part of their world. Warm. Safe. The bobcat didn't intervene. She simply lay her head down, breathing calmly, the soft rumble of a purr rising in her chest. Time became a gentle current. Days melted into one another in the quiet rhythm of feeding, sleeping, cleaning, and watching these tiny lives bloom. The kittens, once fragile and nearly silent, now filled the room with energy, soft scuffles, high-pitched mews, and curious pounces on tails and shadows alike. They had become part of her. So had their mother. The bobcat, though still cautious, had woven herself into the home in her own quiet way. She now accepted the woman's presence with grace. She tolerated a brush once a day, just lightly across her back. She let the woman clean the kittens when they made messes, and on rare, special occasions, she even leaned into the touch, a moment of closeness that felt like being let into a secret. One afternoon, while the woman was blending another fresh meal, her husband entered the room with a small package. Inside was a new bed, round, plush, large enough for the bobcat and her litter. He placed it by the sunny window where the kittens often lounged. She wasn't sure they'd use it. But the next morning, she found them all curled inside like a basket of soft, purring fruit. It was then that she realized something profound. They were healing, not just growing, but healing, from fear, from hunger, from solitude. The bobcat had survived on scraps and instincts in a concrete garage, her body worn and soul weary. Now she bathed her kittens in warmth and comfort, her purring deep and steady. She no longer flinched at gentle sounds, no longer looked toward the window as if longing for escape. And the woman, she was healing too. Something about caring for these lives, their utter dependence, their unwavering trust, had filled an emptiness she didn't know she carried. Her days, once filled with routines and silence, were now brimming with purpose and presence. She laughed again. She cried, too, but those tears were softer now, grateful. One evening, as the sun dipped low and amber light poured across the room, the woman lay on the floor beside the bobcat's bed. The kittens had climbed all over her, nipping at her sleeves, batting at her hair. She giggled, letting them paw at her fingers, her face glowing with joy. The bobcat lay just inches away, her head resting on her front paws. She watched calmly, her eyes slow blinking with the rhythm of contentment. The woman reached out gently. The bobcat didn't move. And then, she nudged forward, rested her head lightly against the woman's hand. It was not the beginning of their story. It was the moment they both knew they had become family. The days turned golden. Outside, summer deepened, the trees full and humming with life. But inside that small apartment, time moved with a softer weight. Each sunrise brought a tiny miracle. Kittens leaping higher, their legs stronger, their curiosity blooming. The woman kept a soft towel near the window just for them, and every morning she would find one or two perched there, squinting into the sunbeam like little sages. The bobcat watched over them like a queen. She had claimed the room fully now, not just for safety but as a territory of love. Her instincts were intact, but something more had awakened in her. She began to nudge the kittens toward their food dishes, bat them gently when they strayed too far, and even curled her tail around the smallest one when it cried in the night. One night, the woman entered the room late with a bowl of food, minced salmon with goat milk. She was tired from a long day, her shoulders slumped, her eyes heavy. She sat down beside the bed with a sigh, the bowl resting in her lap. The bobcat approached quietly and did something unimaginable. She pressed her forehead gently against the woman's knee. It lasted barely 2 seconds. A nudge, a touch, a gift of presence. But the woman sat frozen, her throat tight. That small gesture, so subtle, so humble, felt like the culmination of all the trust they had built. No mew, no purr. Just a silent thank you, shared between two beings who had saved each other in different ways. The woman whispered, "I'm so glad you came to me." The kittens had begun to climb now, onto shelves, up boxes, over one another. Their tiny claws found their mother's tail and tugged. They wrestled with toys and chewed on socks. And yet, they always returned to her side, to nurse, to rest, to be wrapped in the safety of her fur. The woman, watching it all, began journaling everything. Each milestone, first steps, first bites of solid food, first time one of them batted at her shoelace and didn't run away. She took photos, yes, but more than that, she recorded memories in ink. She wrote about their personalities, their moods, the look in the mother's eyes when she thought no one was watching. She called the journal Shelter in the Silence. And one night, her husband found her sitting at the kitchen table, reading through it with tears in her eyes. "I didn't know how much I needed this," she said softly. He didn't speak, just sat beside her and placed his hand on hers. That same week, she bought more fish, bigger portions. This time, she picked only the freshest. She steamed it lightly, picked out every bone, added a drop of salmon oil, and pureed it just enough to make it smooth. Then she poured it into 5 small saucers for the kittens and 1 larger dish for their mother. As she set them down, the bobcat approached first. She sniffed, glanced up at the woman, and began to eat. Behind her, 5 tiny shadows followed. Life found its rhythm. Morning feeds, midday naps, twilight play. The little room that once echoed with silence now pulsed with energy, playful chaos woven into calm, laughter stitched with soft meows. The woman no longer needed to coax the bobcat. She came willingly, often waiting by the door before mealtimes, tail twitching expectantly. Trust, once rare and brittle, had grown into something durable. The kittens had grown plump. Their fur gleamed. They chased each other in dizzying loops around the room, tackled toy mice with wild abandon, and climbed atop their mother like she were a living mountain. She tolerated it all with quiet patience, only hissing when their play got too rough. The woman knew the time was drawing near. They couldn't stay forever in the nursery room. The kittens would need space, new homes, new families, people who would treat them with the same care, the same softness. But the thought of saying goodbye gripped her heart like a slow ache. One evening, she sat in the room alone. The mother bobcat lay curled beside her, head resting on folded paws. The kittens were sprawled across the floor, all 5 asleep in a sunbeam. The woman reached out and gently stroked the bobcat's ear. "You did it," she whispered. "You brought them into this world. You kept them alive. You made them strong." The bobcat didn't move, but her eyes closed slowly as if in reply. "And I think you saved me too." There was no fanfare, no dramatic crescendo, just the quiet hum of an air conditioner, the sigh of a woman realizing she had opened her home to a miracle. The next few days were a tender blur. The woman began carefully introducing the kittens to other rooms in the apartment. The hallway was a mystery, the living room an adventure. She kitten-proofed every corner, set up soft barriers, and watched them explore with giddy uncertainty. And when she saw how attached the mother had become, how she followed them, checked their every move, stood sentinel during naps, she knew the decision was made. She wouldn't separate them. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Some things were found for a reason. Some moments, however unlikely, stitched together new chapters. She called the vet again. This time, not for a checkup, but to ask about vaccines, long-term care, spaying options. The vet remembered her voice and smiled through the phone. "You've made a home," the vet said. And she had. The woman rearranged a room permanently, converted it into a soft den, complete with climbing trees, fleece tunnels, and beds of every size. She added more aquariums, toys, and scratching posts. Her living space transformed not into chaos, but into a haven. And the bobcat. She bloomed. Her fur grew thick again. Her body, once emaciated, now radiated strength. She walked with a grace that bordered on regal. She wasn't a stray anymore. She was a mother, a guardian, a survivor. Weeks passed. The sun hung lower in the sky now, casting golden rays through the windows as summer began to gently exhale. The kittens had grown bolder, quicker. They skidded through the apartment on soft paws, leapt from ottomans, and tried to ambush one another from behind curtains. Their personalities had bloomed, each uniquely bright. But no matter how far they wandered during play, they always returned to their mother's side. She, once a trembling shadow in a concrete garage, now lay like a queen beneath the windowsill, calm, present, full of silent strength. The woman had fallen into a ritual. Each morning, she would brew tea and sit beside them, the steam curling upward while kittens piled into her lap. The mother would rest a few feet away, always watching, always near. The woman often found herself wondering, how many nights had that bobcat survived alone in the dark? How many cold mornings had she awakened hungry, not knowing if she or her unborn litter would make it another day? And yet here she was. She crouched and opened her journal one last time. Beneath the final entry, she wrote, "They came into our world quietly, unsure, wounded. And they showed us that love doesn't need words, that sometimes the most broken things know how to give the purest kind of love." She was never just a stray. She was a mother, a teacher, a light in the dark. She closed the book. Behind her, the bobcat approached silently, stopping just a foot away. They looked at one another for a long moment, no fear, no distance. Then the bobcat did something she had never done before. She leaned forward and nuzzled her cheek gently against the woman's arm. And the woman smiled, tears on her cheeks, joy in her bones. Whatever tomorrow held, they had found something tonight that would never fade. A home, a family, a forever kind of love.